Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, the author of Lessons Learned on Compliance and Ethics, Best Practices under the FCPA and UK Bribery Act, and my recent ebook, GSK in China, A Game Changer for Compliance. This week on the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report, I'm extremely pleased to have Patrick Taylor from Oversight Systems join me. Patrick has been, in my mind, one of the true thought and product leaders in the compliance arena. Interestingly, Patrick really comes at this from a little bit different perspective. So, Patrick, with that, if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and then lead us up to Oversight Systems and what it does for the compliance practitioner.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom. The background you're speaking of, in the 90s, I was part of a company called Internet Security Systems, and we pioneered this idea called intrusion detection software. So, intrusion detection software looks at network packets. It literally looks at every single packet and tries to find signs, signatures that you've got a hacker on your networks. And that was a very successful product line and company. And after I left ISS, a group of us got together and sort of observed that as much money as people spend to stop hackers, they actually lose more to internal fraud. And we said, well, why don't we build some software that acts like intrusion detection software, but instead of looking at network packets, we'd look at business transactions, the kind of things flowing through accounts payable or travel and expense in ERP systems. And so that was sort of the genesis of Oversight. And the other piece that we recognize is one of the things with intrusion detection is you find stuff, somebody has to do something with it. So that became a different product market in that space. Something called information and event management. But we added that concept in too because we sort of recognized, great, we've got these analytics are going to find things, but now I've got to make sure somebody can efficiently and effectively do something with the things we found. And that whole idea became Oversight Systems. Fraud ended up being a really good design point for us because with fraud, you have to look at everything. You're looking at every single detail. With fraud, you've got somebody trying to cover their tracks, so that sort of says, I want to look at as many data sources as I can because the further I cast the net, the harder it is for someone to cover their tracks. And further, this idea that they're concealing means I have to look for lots of clues, for lots of pieces of evidence. And so we designed to that, and it's turned out to be useful both in finding fraud, but also finding waste and errors. And the last few years has had some great applicability around compliance, in particular anti-bribery and corruption.
Patrick, I think you're pretty aware that my focus is directly on that anti-bribery and anti-corruption. And one of the things that I've been trying to advocate to people is that the Department of Justice has clearly signaled to us in the compliance community, or at least the anti-corruption compliance community, that they think transaction monitoring is an important part of any best practices compliance program. This started back in April of 2012 when the Department of Justice released its declination to Morgan Stanley. One of the reasons specifically cited was the transaction monitoring that Morgan Stanley did over all of its transactions, which led it not to become involved in the transaction that its employee Garth Peterson did. Can you explain how the products of Oversight Systems can really help the compliance practitioner such as myself in transaction monitoring?
Sure. So the thing that transaction monitoring is bringing to you is a view into what's really happening. So there's the theory, here's how the world's supposed to operate. We have our policies, we've done our training, and so in theory, everybody should comply with that. And transaction monitoring gives you a view into the reality of what's happening. And further, you can use it to really understand it from a risk-based perspective, because I think you'd agree that that was one of the other things that the DOJ's emphasizing recently is understanding your risks, right? So I can apply transaction monitoring software. I can look at all of the transactions going on. I can also sort of cross-relate that to employees and other actors, so vendors, agents, distributors, and begin to get a holistic picture of what's going on and really identify the riskiest agents, the riskiest employees. And so as a compliance professional, I now know where to go, whose behavior to try to influence, right? I can say, okay, in the Morgan Stanley case, they kept coming back to Garth and asking him about transactions. He kept explaining them away. But it was that fact that he was going out of his way to evade their systems that helped them get the declination.
On your blog site, or excuse me, on your website, you've got several very interesting blogs that I came across in doing a little research on you and your company. And one of them had some questions that you thought were important for companies to ask, not only of the product and the information the product's giving, but also of themselves. So I'm going to go through this list and ask you if you can just explain, and I think it's a list of 6 questions. So let me start off with the first is, what are the questions that need to be asked?
So that is you're trying to get into what risks am I looking for, and so in an anti-corruption, anti-bribery type sense, we're looking for things like where have I given distributors excessive discounting? Where is my travel and expense not normal and customary for a given market? Again, we're looking for outliers for risky behavior, and the other questions are also turn that back towards the actors and say, which employees are repeatedly involved in these kind of transactions? Which agents are, which distributors are? So again, you can understand where your risk is coming from.
Okay, next question. What are the answers that help us to move from data to decisions?
So the trick in these is, there are a lot of reporting tools that can spit out answers. What I need to think about is how can I make that actionable? So how can I take that from, instead of a long list of anomalous T&E expenditures, how can I turn that down into, again, hey, here's an employee that's got a pattern of being involved with that. And also, I need to present that to people in an easy to understand way. It needs to be in plain language, so you can pick it up, read it, and go, okay, I understand what the problem is. So that the answers really need to be something that makes it easy for people to act.
So it's really more than just synthesizing the data. It's synthesizing it in a way that somebody like me who's with a legal training or some other type of training could understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the people we deal with in the compliance profession they want to be able to, in a position to act to improve the compliance of their organization. They don't really want to be in the analytics business. And so that's why we really focus on delivering analysis, delivering answers, so that you're in a position to act and to improve, enhance the program.
Okay, next question posed is, can we shift insight into action?
Yes, you absolutely can. I think that's a little of what we covered there. That, again, the trick to it is not to overwhelm you with a lot of details, but instead to be able to pull out the patterns of what's happening. Again, whether that's a lot of activity in a given country or by a particular person, repeatedly the same things happening again and again. Let me, if you think about it from an anti-corruption and anti-bribery professional's point of view, you may be able to address, let's say, look, I want to address 10, 20 issues this month. Let me give you the 10 most highest impact things to go after. How can we help you focus on that?
And then the next question, I'm going to pose the question, and then I'm going to pose a fact scenario from recent enforcement action. And the question is, how do we tie information to business process? And the fact pattern I'd like to give you is, in Poland, there was an FCPA violation against a U.S. company in the realm of charitable donations, where a charitable donation was made within 24 to 48 hours of a contract being awarded. Is there a way that transaction monitoring can tie those two together and present that information to the compliance professional or whoever should be looking at it within a company?
You can, but it's a very interesting problem because those two events didn't run through the same business process exactly, right? One's on the sales and order side, and the charitable donation, was probably the money went through accounts payable, but you also could see how it was accounted for in the general ledger.
Right.
And that gets back to that point I talked about earlier. Well, the idea of when looking for fraud, you got to cast the net very wide. That's the same thing that's happening here. You need to cast the net in terms of looking at data from, in this case, 3 business processes. And to really get the best coverage, you're probably going to want to put travel and expense in as well, right? Those are tend to be the big risk areas. And if you can tie the threads together, the clues, the pieces of evidence from all those areas, you could find things like that incident in Poland.
Okay. And that kind of leads to the next question, which is who needs the information at the right time? And also, one of the things that I think you emphasize is that it's not the speed of the information, it's the quality of the information. Could you sort of explain those concepts?
Yeah, so typically in this area, this is not very often the kind of thing where we're all going to go run out of the building like we're chasing a fire, right? The transaction just cited, all those events happened over several day periods. So it's not like I'm trying to stop a meltdown on Wall Street per se. And the thing you want to think about is triaging. If it's a big enough impact and a high enough risk, yes, I do want to bring that to people's attention so they can in fact jump on it. And one of the ways we found effective to do that is when we see enough, let's automatically generate an email to the right set of people, because everyone's used to sort of responding to issues that come across an email. That gives you the alert. Now you can come into the system and dig into it. And then the second piece more is how do I handle, again, finding the high risk actors. And this might be, if I'm trying to correct behavior of particular employees, that's an activity that's going to happen over the course of a month. And what I want to do is either bring it to your attention when I see a high risk employee or high risk set of actions from an employee, or B, make it easy when you say, okay, we're going to go visit Poland. Who do I need to sit down with from an anti-corruption perspective? Which 5 employees do I need to do some remedial training with or ask them questions about it? We always want to make it very easy for you to find that when you're in a position to do something about it.
You said something very interesting there I'd like to follow up on. Generally, there are three concepts in compliance. You want to prevent corruption, you want to detect it if it occurs, and you want to remediate it as soon as is reasonable. And I had always thought of transaction monitoring as simply a detection tool, but the way you just explained it, it can lend itself to not only a prevention, but also a remediation.
Yeah, it gets into that idea of looking beyond just the transactions and thinking about the bad actors, what's happening in all of that. Because now when I know who my likely bad actors are, I can go put some preventative measures in with them. Again, whether it's closer supervision of what they're doing, more training, perhaps I reduce their signature authorities. There's a lot of actions I can take once I know who I need to worry about. And the other thing is really, as you find stuff, you want to have a process for dealing with and remediating those. So, I mean, you may find some things and go, okay, I'm not gonna worry about that, but keep tracking it, because if I see a pattern of this over a couple of months, now all of a sudden maybe it's going to bubble up to the top, right? The risk accumulates as there are more and more questionable transactions associated with a particular actor here, right? Because remember, the people that are trying to do this they're trying to not get on your radar screen, right?
Right. And you touched on this on the last couple of answers to questions, but let me just end with the following question. How often should the information be updated, delivered, and shared?
It will, fundamentally, you have to say that relates back to the business process and how quickly are you going to be able to remediate. So again, if you're in a Wall Street trading, it's really fast. But for most FCPA, your cycle time can be a lot slower. We see people do things on a daily basis. We see a lot more, and we've recently created a new offering to support this, of really trying to think about it kind of on a monthly type cycle basis. A lot of it relates to how well prepared or how prepared are you to act on it? What kind of a timeline can you act on it? And then we want to meld the analysis to be at least as fast as your ability to act. We can analyze it all the time and then give you the ability to act when you're ready to act.
Okay. I'd now like to turn to a recent product offering that Oversight Systems released back in August, relating specifically to travel and entertainment. And one of the things that struck me in reading about the product offering was how this sort of analysis, specifically in travel and entertainment, lends itself to an anti-corruption perspective as well. So, for instance, one of the things you talked about was both intentional and unintentional double billing of employee expenses. by a single employee, and perhaps if multiple employees went to a restaurant or did some entertainment and all billed for it. Could you explain about how the concepts you worked with to come up with that product really also would assist the compliance practitioner? Because I was very intrigued with that.
Yes, so the concept behind on demand is saying, how can we almost work like as if you had hired a consultant? And so that we're meant to be, this product to be as easy to use as if you called up someone to go do a anti-corruption investigation for your country. If you work through how that would go, you'd identify the expert, he'd tell you the data they need, he'd probably ask you a few questions to understand the nuances of your business, deliver a preliminary analysis, you'd review that with them, and boom, you'd have the final report. And that's exactly what the product you mentioned, Insights on Demand, does. You pick the area of the pieces of analysis you want to run. We'll tell you what data we need. You fill out a survey, which kind of lets us adapt to the nuances of your business. We show you the results. You can work through those, and boom, we'll issue a final report. And it becomes a really interesting way to find some of the things that you just described. Because remember, we're software, and it has the ability to deal with insane amount of detail. So on that duplicate billing thing, I'll tell you the thing we find surprisingly more often than I would have guessed is it's really two employees. One of us puts it on the corporate credit card. The other guy takes the printed receipt and books it as out-of-pocket expense. It's on two different expense reports, and we may even do it in 2 different weeks, which becomes just a really hard thing for any human to find. But with sophisticated software, you can absolutely identify issues like that.
And you started off, or at least we started off our visit this morning where you talked about the kind of journey, your own journey to get to oversight systems and the things you had seen in information management and in the fraud world. Would you say that is this tool lend itself to both sort of a deliberate fraud and just an inadvertent spend or duplication that employees might engage in?
It's a great question. As I mentioned, we started out with heading very much towards fraud. And what we found out with our first customers is in the process of looking for fraud, you find a whole lot of other interesting things. So fraud is kind of the standard that sets the mark for how sophisticated you need to be. But once you're doing that, you find errors, you find waste, you find abuse, you find opportunities for improvement. So there are a lot of interesting things you can find once you start rigorously examining the details of every transaction. And again, a piece of software can do that. You can have the scalability to actually look at all those details. And again, if you present the results in the right way, you can provide really interesting and informative insights to people.
Let me pick up on the last statement there, presenting the results in the right way, because we've talked a little bit about your background, and obviously I think most people know I come from a legal background and moved into compliance, so that the data that you guys are looking at, my eyes would glaze over if I had to look at it. How can you present it to a lawyer or a compliance officer so that they at least understand this is an issue that should be flagged for further review?
Right, it's a great question. So, and that starts in a couple of areas. One, let's give you the big picture trend view, right? So let me just see what's happening from a trending standpoint. Now we do that with things like dashboards and graphics and or graphs and things like that kind of give you a big picture view. And the second thing though is we also help you find, and hey, here's a particular thing you want to look at. So we'll actually produce some text, some prose that'll say, this country is out of line across these 3 or 4 dimensions. So we're actually laying it out for you. Here's what we think you ought to look at. And then you can drill down into the next level and look at, let's say, all the activities for a given employee in that country. Look at, let me change that. Look at all of the things we thought were interesting around that employee. So we won't show you everything that employee did. We're just going to show you the things that had evidence, that had signs of problems. And again, all of this is being laid out for you in plain language so that you're not trying to have to interpret results or something like that. It's just being laid out for you. We think this particular meal was a problem, and here are the 3 reasons why the software thought it was a problem. We give you the chance now to apply human judgment, the discernment of the human mind, to figure out this is really exactly an issue, but we can tell you why we thought it was an issue. And sort of we look at it as you're looking for needles in a haystack, right? We're going to go through and look at all the hay, and we're going to put in front of you a very small pile of sharp things, and then we'll make it easy for you to quickly go through and figure out, okay, well, we do have a needle here.
Great. Well, Patrick, we're nearly at the end of our time. I was wondering if you could tell our audience how to find Oversight Systems and how they might get in touch with you guys if they wanted additional information.
Well, absolutely. So we're at oversightsystems.com, www.oversightsystems.com. And one thing I'll pass on for our Insights on Demand, we can do a risk assessment for you. So look at 90 days of your travel and expense, run it through our system. We'll do that as a free trial. And in essence, you'll find out, is there something worth looking at? Is it, or, are we okay? But it's something that a way for us both to understand, us and the customer, is there a reason to do more together or not? But it's a pretty straightforward exercise and one that people find a lot of value with. So I'd encourage people to come to our website, sign up for a trial, and find out for yourself if transaction monitoring can add value to your anti-corruption and anti-bribery program.
Well, great, Patrick. I think we're at the end of our time. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about Oversight Systems and yourself and explaining to my audience or our audience the tools that are available, specifically your tool and your company's tools. So thanks again.
Thank you, Tom.